The hidden story in the third degree. To fully understand the ritual, you have to think in terms of steganography, as I have explained in a previous talk. Here is an example, neatly hidden inside the third degree, which goes to show the amount of thought that has gone into constructing the 3 degrees. But I'm sorry to say, I believe only a few of the brethren will fully understand the implications of tonight's talk. The emblems of the third degree are listed at the beginning of the lecture, but why bother telling people what you're about to tell them anyway? This is the art of steganography. If you don't give people a hint, they will never find the hidden story. If you compare the list of emblems at the beginning to the emblems given in the lecture, you should notice a discrepancy. There are 12 items listed in the beginning, but 13 are given in the lecture. The extra hidden emblem is the all-seeing eye. That comes after the sword pointed at the naked heart. The 12 items given are the pot of incense, the beehive, the Book of Constitution, guarded by the tiler's sword, the sword pointing at a naked heart, the ark and anchor, the 47th problem of Euclid, the hourglass, the scythe, the common gavel, the coffin, spade, and sprig of acacia. Notice also how the lecture is divided after the scythe excuse me, by 3 raps, leaving the last 4 emblems, the coffin, spade, common gavel, and sprig of acacia, for the worshipful master to explain. And of these 4, only the sprig of acacia has a moral lesson attached to it. When you analyze the now 13 emblems in detail, you will find that the choice of emblems makes for an interesting story. The pot of incense represents the Catholic Church. Incense was part of the popery that Protestants had rebelled against, as the Anglican Church did not normally use incense. The newly established Britain at the beginning of the 18th century was very concerned that a Catholic monarch might try to take the throne. The struggle to keep Catholicism from becoming the state religion had been a major theme of the Stuart dynasty. The beehive was a nod of approval at King George of Hanover becoming king. The reason is that the beehive had been used as a symbol for his grandfather, Frederick V, Elector of Palatine. As Professor Yates has stated, the beehive was a symbol of a beneficent monarch. The Act of Settlement of 1701 meant that only a Protestant could become a monarch of Britain. And as Queen Anne was without child, Parliament had to look overseas to find a candidate. The Protestant Sophia of Hanover was eligible as she was granddaughter of King James VI of Scotland and First of England, but she had died 2 months before the death of Queen Anne in 1714. So Sophia's son, George, was invested as King George I of Britain, which was the start of the House of Hanover, which ruled for nearly 200 years until the death of Queen Victoria. The next 3 emblems refer to the institution of Freemasonry. The Book of Constitution represents the start of the Revival of Freemasonry, just 3 years after the German king ascended the British throne. The sword pointing at the naked heart is, of course, the sharp instrument applied to the naked left breast. In Britain, a small dagger called a poniard is often used for this ceremony. It refers to the precautions that Freemasonry had to take to stop the wrong people forcing themselves into the craft. This is probably a reference to the Jacobites at that time. The all-seeing eye, the hidden emblem, which you won't see on here, refers to Solomon's house, the very eye of the kingdom, as given in Sir Francis Bacon's The New Atlantis, published in 1627, which also had many Rosicrucian references in it. Rosicrucianism had been announced in Paris in 1623, just 4 years before the publication of Bacon's book. The Ark and Anchor are two of the 5 emblems that Clement of Alexandria had used as symbols of early Christianity. The 2 others being the star, which is in the middle of the lodge, the fish, and the olive branch. So I believe that the first 3 Grandmasters wanted to show that Freemasonry was built on Christian precepts and was not a subversive organization. The 47th problem of Euclid has a very important role to play in understanding the real objectives of Freemasonry, and I have covered that in a previous talk. But notice that it is still referred to as Euclid's problem, even though Freemasons claim that Pythagoras had discovered it. But I think I've already said too much about that. The hourglass is referred to as a machine, though we would not think of it in those terms today. This may be a reference to the move away from the spiritual towards the material, as indicated by the square and compass. Though, of course, it could mean exactly as it says, that we all waste too much time. The scythe has always been a symbol of death. But in this instant, it is purposely a mixed metaphor. Any educated man in the 18th century would have known it was Atropos that cut the thread of life, and not with a scythe, but with scissors. The scythe reference comes from the book of Revelation, chapter 14, verse 14, and has a different allusion. Then the story is interrupted with 3 raps. This is to show that what comes next is important and that we have to stand to hear it. The common gavel refers to the death of our Grandmaster, Hiram Abiff, but is also an emblem of the story of the Messiah, which I have also referred to previously. Interestingly, the spade and the coffin are not in the ritual, but they have been inserted here for a reason. It is noteworthy that also neither of them have a moral attached to that emblem, perhaps to show that they are not in the ritual. But I believe that they refer to the problem of mortalism that was being hotly debated in England at the time. This started in 1692 when Henry Layton, a lesser-known philosopher, published a pamphlet denying the concept of the immortality of the soul. This also ties in with the republication of the Book of Common Prayer in 1662, over which there had been much argument in Parliament and led to demonstrations in many parts of England. The story of the emblems of the 3rd degree ends nicely with a counter to Layton's argument, using the sprig of acacia as the symbol, saying, no, you are wrong, the soul is immortal. Again, we can see the subtlety of the Grandmaster's crafting. They could have chosen a dove or an angel as an emblem of immortality, but they didn't. They chose the sprig of acacia, as it echoes one of Clementine of Alexander's 5 Christian symbols, the olive branch. It also ties in the use of acacia wood in making sacred objects such as the Ark of the Covenant. So, in summary, I can imagine the smiles and nods of aggrievement from the brethren as they attended one of the first performances of the 3rd degree. they would have recognized the symbols indicating that popery had been ousted for Britain for once and for all by Frederick V's grandson, King George. The dream of Francis Bacon had been realized in the Revival of Freemasonry that was based on Christian principles, albeit Protestant ones, that emphasized that the human soul did not die but was immortal. Well, I hope this adds to your understanding that Freemasonry is a complex puzzle that took the first 3 Grandmasters 6 years as to write. And I hope it also adds to your enjoyment of the ritual. Thank you.